Good evening, everybody. So first things first, I'm Ian. I'm a level 2 from the Philippines, and my favorite color is obviously green. And my favorite color combination is Simic and Timber. So for tonight, we're going to be talking about LEC and HCE. So our objective for tonight is to differentiate the two and to differentiate if it categorizes LEC, HCE, or maybe something else. Brief philosophy on both of them and handling common scenarios. So for common scenarios, to help me with my discussion, I'll be having some helpers with me. The common culprits for this type of infractions. So there's a brief profile of them. We have Narcy, Bobby, Tina, and Yori. They might be familiar to you. Some of you might have seen them in your local game store. Some of you might see them in big events. Regardless, to effectively fix their problems, we need to analyze each situation properly. So speaking of situations properly, we're going to jump right into one. So we have Bobby here, and he has a Bomat Courier. Yay, Bomat Courier. And let's say that the Bomat Courier already attacked for 3 times. So he has 3 cards underneath it. Then later, Bobby's opponent decides to get rid of the Courier. And for some unforeseen circumstance, Bobby suddenly flips over one of the cards and saw that it was a lightning bolt. So my question for you guys is, what do you think is the infraction and what do you think is the fix for this situation? Does anybody have a guess or at least a idea on what infraction and what is your fix? So we have Benny with no infraction, no remedy. Anybody else? Okay, so we're gonna move dexterity error, no penalty, no remedy. Okay, so the important part here is, yes, a lot of you got the one part correct, which is it is a no fix, but it is still LEC, and you still issue a warning. It's no fix because we can't really do anything about it that he saw the card because it's already exiled. It's separate from the library. So we just leave it as it is. But you still give Bobby and looking at extra cards, and you give him a warning and you tell him that, okay, please, I'm giving you this warning so that to remind you to not to do it again. Of course, we turn it face down again. So looking at extra cards. Okay. In definition, it says that it enabled someone to see the face of a card that they were not supposed to do, like what Bobby just did. He saw the lightning bolt that he was not supposed to. And if we look at the philosophy, it will tell you that this infraction is accidental. So that means, and also we need to remember that this infraction is very, very easy to commit because us as players always touch their cards. You can't play Magic without touching your cards. So you touch your library, you touch your Excel zone, you touch your cards. So it's easy to do something, hit this, it falls down. So we can't penalize them severely for it. That is why the penalty for this is usually warning. Not usually, only warning. And if we look here, the LEC only has one remedy. It is to shuffle any previous unknown cards back into the deck if the cards were in the library. Because if it's not in the library, technically we can't do anything about it. Bongmat's courier's ability is put all cards exiled to the hand. He did not activate the courier. The courier died before he was able to activate it. Okay. So in summary, looking at extra cards, this involves dexterity error. So when you bump or accidentally do something, seeing cards you shouldn't, and seen but not added to a set. So this last part, usually this is for players who likes to, let's say they were not supposed to draw a card, but they put the card on the table. It's not yet part of their hand, it's still on the table. So it cannot be, it's not a hidden card error yet. So that can be fixed as an LEC or as a GRV. So again, for LEC, we have two fixes. Either you shuffle the problematic card back into the library, or no fix. Okay. Actually, LEC is pretty short. It's just about, most of it is just dexterity error. Then we're going to move on to our next example, which is Narcy. Let's say Narcy has 3 cards in hand. Then she uses one of them and plays Archmage Charm. Then she chose the second mode, which says target player draws 2 cards. And of course, she likes to draw cards, so she targets herself. She says, I will draw 2 cards. Then on the event that she drew cards, she accidentally put 3 cards into her hand. So the question we have now is, what is the infraction, penalty, and fix? Is anybody willing to give it a shot? This is draw 2 cards. So she technically draw 3 cards instead of just 2 cards. Of course, it's not a looking extra cards because it's already. So Benny said it's HCE, warning, thoughts is fixed. Okay. Anybody with a different answer? All right. So that's the accurate answer. It's HCE, warning. Then opponent chooses the cards that is extra, or the thoughts is fixed. So Narcy reveals her hand. Then her opponent chooses the supposed to be extra card and puts it inside the library. So the judge will shuffle it back to the library. So it goes away. So that is for our hidden card error. Now, if we look at the first definition of hidden card error, it will say that a player commits an error in the game that cannot be corrected by publicly available information. So a lot of people are asking, what is publicly available information? This is information that both players has access to. So it could be something that has been revealed, or is something in a public zone like the graveyard, face-up exile, battlefield. Those are publicly available information. So to give you a clear example, we have now Clumsy Yori. So we have Yori here, and he has a, would the fix be the same? If she saw it, it would be the same. But you would operate on the 3 cards only instead of the whole hand. Okay. So we have here our satyr, and Yori is, this is the first time that Yori plays the card, and even play with the card and casts it. He's not very familiar with the card. So when he played, he revealed the top 4 cards of his library. And look, all lands. But the problem is, instead of following what Stater said that you may put a land card from among them into your hand, you already thought that, oh, I revealed all lands. I put them all into my hand. So the question is, what do we do? How do we fix this? Anybody have a good hint or at least an idea how this would be fixed? Okay, so for the fix here, this is actually, the infraction here is not HCE. The infraction here is a GRV. Then we give Yori warning. The reason that we give a GRV instead of a HCE is because the opponent knows what are the cards that has been revealed that went into Yori's hand. So we can easily know now how to rebuild Yori's hand. So we do the backup, the fix of the GRV, which is a backup. So we get the 4 cards, the 4 lands, and we let it reveal, and we redo the Satyr Wayfinder. So Yori then chooses 1 land, and the rest of it goes to his graveyard. Okay. So a lot of people ask, why do we have a Thoughtsys fix now? And the philosophy here is so that the opponent will have the advantage of a hidden card error is actually very high when you don't reveal something that should be, or you draw an extra card. So we give your opponent sufficient knowledge so that the generated advantage from that hidden card error would be offset. Okay, so our next example will be a fun one. I think a lot of people are very familiar with this. So we have Bobby with Bob. Bobby with Bob. So start of his turn, he untapped his lands. Then he said, Dark Confidant, trigger. Then he drew a card, put it in his hand. Then he said, draw step, draw a card, put it in the hand. Then opponent calls a judge. Judge, he did not reveal. So how do we fix this? Anybody willing to tell us how do we fix this? This has been very common back then when Tarmogoyf was still popular. Bob and Tarmo. Okay, so since this is not a, first we look, this is not a mistrigger because he acknowledged the trigger and he actually put the card in his hand. He just failed to reveal it. So this falls under hidden card error. Then it's a warning. Then Bobby unfortunately needs to reveal his hand. And now the opponent chooses which card was supposed to be the one revealed for Dark Confidant. And unfortunately for Bobby, the revealed card was a Flame Javelin. So yeah, take 6. I mean, yes, you want play aggro, okay. Yes, that's correct, Carlo. Okay, so now we look at the summary of hidden card error. So for hidden card error, it roughly falls into these categories where the public available information is not enough to fix the errors. Like what happened before with the Satyr Wayfinder, since we had enough public available information is enough to fix it. It is not an HCE. even though there were cards that went into the hand of Yori. Next point is a card's identity is only known to one player. This is very important. If both players know the card, then it's not an HCE because it's publicly available information. If nobody knows the identity of the cards, as both players don't know, then it's also maybe not. It's also not an HCE. Then it can more or less be fixed by a GRV. Then the last part is a set has more cards than it should have. So that's why we usually fix it. This part doesn't only apply to the hand. A set is a group of cards, any group of cards that a card or the game states that you separate into a group. So let's say if you cast, if you have a spell that tells you to scry 3, then if you look at the top 3, then that's a set. If you scried 4, then that means you have now, that set now has more cards than it should have. Now, for the common fixes, well, all the fixes of hidden card error, we either have the Totsis effect where the opponent chooses which card should be that card. Then we also have a simple backup plus Totsis effect. So this usually happens when if a player drew extra cards, then play the land. So before you operate on the hand, you can do a simple backup by returning the land to that player's hand. Then you do the Totsis effect. Okay? And simple backup, the difference between a backup and a simple backup, a full backup and a simple backup. A simple backup does not have random element. If there's a random element involved, then you cannot call it a simple backup anymore. Next, we have the Morph swap. I'll discuss it in a bit. Then no fix. So either you Totsis, you back up plus Totsis, you do a Morph swap, or a no fix. Okay. So for completion's sake, we're going to be talking about Morph because it's not popular anymore. At least I hope not. Okay. So Morph is the upgrade path in the hidden card error. That if they have a face down card that doesn't have Morph, and they found out that's the case, then the player automatically gets a game loss. That the penalty there is harsh because the amount of advantage that can be generated is very, very great. If you can just keep playing, putting cards from your hand as a face down 2-2, then your opponent's 13-13 without trample would probably not be able to hit you. So yeah, so the potential for abuse for morphs is high. That's why the penalty is a game loss. But we have a no upgrade if and only if it satisfies all 3 parameters listed here. Number 1 is there's a morph card in their hand. So that means that they really have something that could have been morphed. Number 2, number 2, it says haven't added an unknown card to their hand. This is very important because if they somehow drew a card for whatever reason or add a card to their hand, from the point that they played the morph card, it could be possible that the card added to their hand is the one with morph. And if that happens, then that means that they have gained a very big advantage over their opponent. And the third is they call the judge on themselves. If any of this is not true, then we reward that player with a game loss. because there's really a very high advantage to be gained. If all these three checks out, you just give them a hidden card error warning, swap the cards that doesn't then play and the one with the morph that you're supposed to play, and then tell them, please play more carefully next time. Okay? So far, do we have any questions about these things? So I don't think we have. So we're gonna, it's all or nothing. This is an if and only if statement for programmers out there. So that means it all must be true, or else it's an upgrade. Okay, so for tell, I would say it wouldn't have that much impact because Fortel exiles a card from your hand into a zone that does not affect the board state. So let's say if you foretell a card without foretell, I don't know how you're going to cast it anymore. So I think the problem for abuse there is a lot less. So it won't have the same upgrade path as Morph. Okay, so next we go to Tina. So Tina has a Coco, a very popular card for a lot of people, especially that it got added to Arena. So Coco. So Tina casts Coco. And she looks at the top 7 cards of her library, places 2 creatures into the battlefield, then shuffles then places the rest in the bottom of her library. Then at the end of her turn, she cracks a fetch, then passes her turn. Then opponent ends their turn, and on her turn again, they notice, Tina and her opponent notices that, wait, Coco says top 6, not top 7. So the question is, how do you guys would fix this? And what is the infraction and penalty for this? Since she was supposed to only look at the top 6, but she did the top 7. Any brave soul, brave volunteer that was willing to answer this question? I somehow can see if there are people typing. Okay, so for the answer here, it's yes, it is still HCE. It's still HCE warning, and there's no more fix. The reason for no fix here is because we cannot possibly rebuild the set, the erroneous set anymore. So since that we cannot rebuild the set that was shuffled away, and it has already been more than a turn, we can't really fix it anymore. Then that means there's no fix. But we still award her with an HCE warning. Please don't do this again. This warning is a reminder for you to not do this again. Okay. Now we're going to be talking about, since we already talked about looking at extra cards, hidden card error. No fix because you cannot possibly rebuild the set, that the erroneous set, which is the 7 cards. You cannot rebuild it accurately because the opponent doesn't know the cards, and you can't really just ask her to rebuild it. Yes, you put it on the bottom, but she cracked a fetch and shuffled the library, so it's gone anymore. So it's no more. Then also it's more than a turn that has passed, so I'm not sure if we can't really go back to it anymore. So now that we're done talking about what is LEC, what is HCE, we're also going to talk about what is not HCE. So why do we need to talk about this? It's important to know which one is HCE and which is not, because the fix for hidden card error, which is popularly known as the Potts fix, is very, very disruptive to the game. It gives the player it gives the opponent a very big advantage. So we need to know when it is not an HCE. So first, it cannot be an HCE if it's not a gameplay error. So why are we asking this? Because it can be possibly from a different vein. Example, if the player is cheating, then that is not a hidden card error. That's already cheating. If it's a deck error, that's a deck error. That's a tournament error. That's not a hidden card error anymore. Then the other popular one is the root cause of the violation is a game rule violation. Like what the IPG examples say, that if you cast a brainstorm using wrong mana, then you fix it as a game rule violation and not as a hidden card error. Since the IPG always wants us to fix things using the root cause, even though the player has extra cards in their hand with the wrong mana. So we will always go back to the root cause, which is the wrong mana, not the extra cards there. And next is opponent permitted the error or is the controller of the cause. This part was specifically, how to put it, specifically reminded by the IPG, specifically for the card Narset Quarter of Veils. Ever since that card was printed, it caused a lot of issues. And that's why if your opponent doesn't stop you from drawing a card because they have a Narset, it is not a hidden card error. Because if you think about it, if you have a Narset, and you know that if your opponent draws an extra cards and you call on them, and suddenly it's a hidden card error, then voila, that's an instant Thoughtseize for you. It's the advantage for that is very, very huge. Like, you play an Narset, go. On your turn, you draw a card, you crack a clue, then you still draw a card. Then I call a judge. Judge, I Thoughtseize him. He has extra card. No, we don't do that. So when this happens, if the opponent allowed you to get an error that looks like an HCE, it is handled as a GRV because most of the time it will be a GRV. And lastly, what is not a hidden card error? The card is in a uniquely identifiable position. So what's a uniquely identifiable position? This is saying that everybody, both of the players, agree that it is that card. There's no denying that it's that card. The very common example for here is, let's say you drew an extra card, but you have no cards in hand. You only have one card in your hand, and that's the extra card that you drew. So that card is in a uniquely identifiable position because you cannot deny that that is the extra card. So you handle it as a GRV and not as an HCE. So you don't need to reveal it. It just gets thrown back into the deck. Okay. So now we have this is the summary for the LEC and HCE, or at least the common scenarios for them. So for LEC, again, we have dexterity error, fat finger error, or how do we else call it, Yorion deck error. Then also seeing cards you shouldn't, but not added to another set. So as for hidden card error, forgetting to reveal a card going to the hand. That's a very common thing, especially with the dummy skull getting popular right now. Then a player has more cards in a set, in a hidden set, than can be accounted for. So this set, again, the set is a group of cards by the game or by the card rules. So it can be the hand, the library, the scry, the face down exiled permanents. And the most important part is that only one person knows the identity of the cards. Okay, so now we're gonna go into a bit more of the common scenarios. So it'd be great if people would try to answer the questions that I'm gonna fire. Okay, so first question that we're gonna be playing at would be with Bobby. Oh, it's a goblin that you guys are not familiar with. So we have White Eye Witch that says that when it dies or another creature you control dies, you scry 1. Then Bobby also has another goblin with him. So what would happen if someone unfortunately sweeps the board? What happens now? What triggers would Bobby have? So yes, Bobby would have now scry 1 and then scry 1. So he would scry 1 twice. Now, what happens if Bobby, on his first scry, accidentally looks at 2 cards instead of 1? He looks at 2 cards, calls a judge, then says, the 2 cards got stuck together. So how do you guys would rule that? If the 2 scry cards got stuck together, how would you rule it? Dexterity error. So if it's a dexterity error, where does it fall? It falls into LEC. So since it's a LEC warning, we just choose one of those randomly, shuffle it back to the deck, then he proceeds with his scry 1, scry 1. Now, what if Bobby scries 2, then the opponent calls on Bobby, then Bobby told you that I thought scry 1 plus scry 1 equals scry 2. How would you rule that? Anybody brave enough to try that? Bobby said that I did not know that scry 1 and scry 1 would not make a scry 2. So I thought it would just add together and become scry 2. So now he's holding the scry 2 cards in his hand. So any brave soul willing to try this exercise? I'll give you maybe 20 more seconds. Let's see if anybody will be. As a reminder, this will of course be in competitive REL. Okay, so a lot of you are still saying it's LEC. Okay. Forced to scry down 1 card. Okay. So I have our time up. So the answer for this is it's actually HCE. Because a set has more cards than it should. A hidden set that is known to one player has more cards than it should. So Bobby should have just scried 1 and scried 2. So now we operate the Totsis effect on the erroneous set, which is the scry 2. Well, scry 1 that had came 2 cards. So now the scry 1, so the 2 cards, Bobby reveals it, opponent chooses which one goes to the library, shuffle the library into the random portion of the library. Then Bobby continues with his scry 1, then scry 1 again. Okay? So again, it is an set, hidden set that has more cards to it that is only known to one player. Okay, everybody follows with that? As we go into the next, our second situation. Okay, so now we have Narcy. Narcy with a dig through time. So let's say that Narcy casts dig through time. And then she picks up 4 cards in one hand and 4 cards on the other. What is there an infraction? Is there a penalty? And if ever, is there a fix?
Okay, thank you, Jesse.
So I'll give you maybe 30 seconds to think and type this through. So as you know, dig through time only tells you to look at the top 7 cards of your library, not top 8. But Narcy has 4 cards in one hand and 4 cards in the other. How do we fix this? So we have an LEC, give warning, partial fix for the second set. Okay. HEC fix for cards 5 to 8. Okay. Anybody else wants to add to the other answers? Okay, so the answer here is yes, it is a HCE, and of course it is a warning. Then for HCE, you always operate on the smaller or the latter set that has the erroneous cards. So let's say that this is the cards that she drew first, then on the second cards, you just do the Totsis effect on the cards that are on the 5 to 8, like what Ron said. Fix the 5 to 8. So opponent chooses one of those and shuffles it back to the library. Then Narcy proceeds with her dig through time. Okay. So now, question, same situation. Narcy casts dig through time, but this time she gets 4 cards. She gets her deck, puts 4 cards in the face down on the table, then another 4 cards on the table without looking at them. So now she has 8 cards down on the table. Then an opponent calls a judge. Judge, she has 8 cards on the table. So now the question is there an infraction, penalty, and is there a fix? So unlike the situation before, this is on the table, then that means that Narcy was not able to look at them, unlike the first one that it was in her hand, in her left and right hand. This one is in the table. Okay, so A says GRV warning, return the last card to the top of the library. Anybody else with a different answer? No, we're gonna play with Narcy not having cards in her hand. She just placed the cards that's supposed to be from dig through time face down on the table, like how some players do before they put it into their hand. So yes, this is not an HCE because nobody knows the identity of the cards, and HCE specifically says that exactly one player should know the identity of the cards for it to be an HCE. So this is a GRV. So if the last card is identifiable and both players agree that it is indeed the last card, yes, you can return it to the library. But if both players are not agreeing on which is the last card, then you pick a random card and you shuffle it back to the library. Okay? So if the last card is identifiable and both players agree, then yes, you just put it there. If not, then randomly choose the card. Okay? So far so good. Everybody on the same track. Now we have Tina. Tina again.
Thank you so much.
So now, sorry, I'm just gonna drink. Okay. So Tina plays Enlightened Tutor, which is search your library for artifact enchantment, reveal it. The random card. Let me see. I'm just double checking stuff. Okay, so since the card is not really known, yes, we just place it on top. My bad, my bad. My bad. But I think I'm something. But I think you only return it if it is subsequently drawn. Actions that cause a player to learn the identity of cards at specific. Well, you did not learn the identity of the card. The backup section only says that you return it to the random portion of the library if the identity of the card, if you know the identity of the card. So the identity is not known to any one player. So it shouldn't be on top. I would think it should be because it's a GRV, so it has random elements, or at least I think has random elements because the library is random. But I guess both either or would work since since the card is technically random. Shuffling it into the library or just leaving it on top would have the same effect because it doesn't both players don't know anything about the card. Okay. So we're gonna proceed now. So we have Tina with Enlightened Tutor. So what happens when she searches for a card? Let's say she reveals I reveal a Sensei's Divining Top. Then she apparently puts it into her hand instead of putting it on top of her library. What is the violation? What is the infraction, penalty, and fix for that? That the card that she revealed went into her hand instead of the top of her library. So anybody willing to tackle this? An enlightened tutor that has a card revealed but went to her hand instead of the library. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so for the enlightened tutor, so the important part here is that Tina revealed the card before it went to her hand. So that means both players know the identity of the card. So this cannot be an HCE. So we process this as a GRV. So we just get the card and it goes to the zone that it should be, which is the top of the library. Of course, we still give her a warning for that. Okay, so this is a GRV because both players know the identity of the cards because it was revealed. Okay, so now what if she has an idyllic tutor, which she searched for an enchantment card. Let's say she searched for an Urza Saga, reveals it. Hey, she searched for an Urza Saga, but she did not reveal and put it into her hand. What would be the infraction, penalty, and fix that she forgot to reveal? And for those who are in the judge community for quite some time, yes, it is a failure to reveal. Okay, yes, so this falls under HCE. It is a warning, and yes, the fix is Totsies. The Tina reveals her hand. Opponent chooses which card was supposed to be searched. If the card that the opponent chooses is not an enchantment, it goes back to the library. Then she does the search again, but this time properly and reveals an enchantment. But if the chosen card by the opponent is an enchantment, then that's it. She just reveals her hand, chooses the enchantment. We go on with the game. We give her an HCE warning. Okay, so now, third question for these two cards, well, for the one card. So, third question. If Tina casts Enlightened Tutor and fails to reveal the card and puts it into her hand, is it a GRV or is it an HCE? So we're talking about Enlightened Tutor that did failure to reveal and the card went into the hand. HCE or GRV? So yes, the fix for this one is the similar to the last one. It is still hidden card error. Then you fix it again, same as the last one. Reveal if it's an artifact or enchantment. it goes to the proper zone. If it's not, shuffle it, then she performs the tutor again. Okay. So now we have a very, very interesting thing that I think a lot of you are familiar with. So we have here Clumsy Yori. Then he cast Grim Tutor. Hey. First time casting Grim Tutor. I'm so happy. So he lose 3 life, search for a card, put it into his hand, shuffle his library. Then afterwards, after he shuffles, he noticed that his hand is gone. He suddenly shuffles his hand into his library. So now the question is it a GRV or an HCE? And the better question is, if you give that penalty, what is the fix? So if you give it GRV, you give it no fix. Okay, so this is the most popular answer for a lot of us. But did you know that this could also be handled as in HCE? Why? Why, you ask? Because we now have a set that has more cards than it should have, which is the library. The library now has more cards than it should have. So if we handle this as an HCE, the opponent, we can now let the opponent rebuild Yori's hand for him. If they agree into the number of cards in Yori's hand. I mean, this is not the most ideal fix. I mean, both of these two is applicable fixes for someone shuffling their hand into their library. So it's up to you guys to choose which one is more appropriate for the situation. The no fix, the GRV no fix, gives you a sad Yori. But the HCE opponent rebuilds hand also gives you a sad Yori, because that means that the opponent is free to search their library, look at what things and whatnot.
It could be in the application.
Then
but if you feel that you want to resubmit,
they can always appeal if they don't like your. They can always appeal if the ruling is not to their taste. Then let the head judge know stuff about it. Yes, and that is also a very thing. If they have super secret tech in their library, they can always consider. The no fix is very common because it saves time. And we are sure that it's actually, that's the most advantageous part of it. It saves time. But the HCE fix opponent rebuilds is also a factor. So this could also be if, let's say, before this happened, let's say the opponent was able to Totsis Yori, and the opponent is a very good person and willing to rebuild Yori's hand, then yes, the opponent can indeed rebuild Yori's hand. If they both agree that the cards that are listed are, yes, they both agree on stuff. Okay, so I think my time is almost up. So if you guys have any questions, please bring it. Let me know now. So that's it for my presentation. Me and my buddies here also thank you. Thank you for listening for our little story. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed this 4 little characters here. So yeah, if you guys have any more questions that we can tackle, maybe we can tackle it with a few minutes remaining. Okay, if there's no more questions, I think